if
This conference will now be recorded.
people have questions as Kikkan is talking, you can put them in the chat box. We'll try to answer them all at the end, but if they come to you during the talk, please write some things in the box, and we will keep an eye on it. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Kikkan. I don't know, Aubrey, if you can switch the screen so Kikkan gets big, but I'm going to mute myself and go away.
All right, well, it's up to me. Good evening, everybody. I'm super excited to be online with you tonight. Your colleagues reached out, and I think, you know, we're all going through the most unprecedented situation, certainly in my lifetime, for probably most of you. And as we work our way through this, it's important to think about the power that we have within ourselves, because in these situations, there is so much outside of our control. But the one thing we can control is how we look at the situation. And as I've gone through a few different challenging circumstances in my life, I've realized that there's kind of been some common themes, some common tools that I have used that have helped me keep that positive mindset, keep focused, find the like-minded people, and ultimately work my way through some of these tough situations that led to an outcome that was bigger and more exciting and more satisfying than I could have ever imagined. And I think having gone through those challenges, it made those experiences that much sweeter. And I'm excited to share these stories with you tonight. But before I get going, I have to give a quick shout out to you guys. I have to admit, I had to look up Stoughton and Norwood and your surrounding communities, but I was super excited to see that you guys have an IKEA. Growing up in Alaska, we did not have an IKEA. That was like the envy of what we called the lower 48. So that's definitely something cool you guys have going for you. It also looks like you have some pretty incredible outdoor recreation areas around you. I've been told you have quite the ski mountain. Okay, maybe it's a hill, but I think it's awesome that there are so many great ways to get outdoors, because that too has been a theme for me in finding kind of that power and strength through tough times to get out. So my story starts in after the day after my first birthday, and I've got a little presentation for you guys. So I'm gonna share my screen, and as we go along, it'll take a quick second to get set up, but I'll kind of walk you through. Hopefully you still see me as we go through. There will be a couple videos in there too, and we found that the best way to give you a good viewing experience, you will actually be finding those links in the chat. We'll pause for a second in the presentation. You can click the link, watch the video, and then come back to the presentation. So that's just a little bit of the groundwork. So I'm going to share my screen. All right. This virtual stuff is so cool. You know, here I can be all the way over in BC and doing this presentation with you guys. Quick second here as it gets set. All right. Let me just pull up. All right. Well, here we go. So the story starts off with the day after my first birthday. My dad put me on skis before I could officially walk, but I started to, from those early memories, enjoy the feeling of sliding on snow. And it was really important for me. I got to grow up in a really active family that loved to get out and do things together. Now, when I was 5 years old, I remember watching my first Olympics on television. I was sitting on the living room floor at my grandparents' house, and as I watched these athletes from all over the world come together and compete for their country, I decided right then and there that I was going to go to the Olympics. Now, this was a little bit ambitious for a 5-year-old, but it wasn't a crazy concept in my family, because I actually had an aunt and an uncle that went to the Olympics in cross-country skiing. So for me, it wasn't a matter of if. I had that belief by having those great role models in my life. It was just a matter of what sport I was going to do. So after that moment, I started trying everything I could get my hands on. I tried all sorts of skiing. Here you'll see a picture of me trying some speed skiing in Alaska, where you basically go to the top of a mountain and you go straight down as fast as you can through a speed trap. I went 74 miles an hour and kind of loved the feeling of kind of taking some risks and doing it that way. When I got into middle school and high school, I got really into running because I liked discovering that I could really see that putting a little bit of work in every day, I got better. I could set goals, I could measure myself. And so I was on this track to be a runner actually. And then at the age of 16, I realized that no American woman had ever won an Olympic medal in cross-country skiing. In running, we'd had a long history of good top women, but in cross-country, it was this exciting new frontier. And at 16, I also realized that the 2002 Olympics were just 3 years away, and they were going to be held in Salt Lake City. So I went to my coaches and I said, I want to try to make the Olympic team in Salt Lake. And they said, well, that's great that you're so ambitious, but cross-country skiers, they don't get good until they're almost 30 years old. So here I was thinking I could compete against women that were almost twice my age. But you know what? I was excited about the dream. I was ready to do the hard work. So I started to make sure I was getting the training in every day. I was eating right, I was sleeping, and I was finding other people that liked to go after those goals too. So all of that ended up coming together, and I made the Olympic team in 2002. At 19 years old, I got to walk into the opening ceremonies in front of 80,000 roaring fans. I remember my heart felt like it was going to beat out of my chest. I was so excited, so proud to be representing my country. When I went out of the gate for my first race, I had some hometown fans there. They yelled. I went out like I was going to win the race. And then I remembered that it was 5 kilometers and I better pace myself. I gave it my all at those Olympics, and my best result was 44th place. But as I stood in the crowd and I looked at the banners which said, "Light the fire within," that's exactly what happened to me. I looked at those medal winners standing on the podium and I decided I wanted to go after that first ever women's cross-country medal. So after those Olympics, I sat down with my coaches and we mapped out all the steps we thought it would take to reach the top step of the podium. And as we mapped it out, it turns out it was going to take 10 years. Now at 19 years old, 10 years is a really long time. Of course, I was ambitious and I thought, well, I'm going to just work extra hard. I'm going to get there sooner. But now I had a roadmap. I could see my big goal off in the future that was motivating me. That was the future I wanted. And now I could see the things I needed to do literally every day, that if I could add up those small successes, would build me into the champion I wanted to become. So I start working on this roadmap. In the first couple of years, things go pretty well. I'm doing well against my age group. I'm making progress. But then in 2005, I hit the wall. I finished dead last at the World Championships. Our team got pulled out of the relay, and I started to seriously doubt whether or not I could stick on this roadmap and reach that top step of the podium. At the end of that season, the US ski team actually cut the entire women's program. So not only was I doubting if it was possible, but the ski team wasn't really showing a lot of belief either. Yet, as tempting as it was to say this is too hard and walk away, I knew I needed to at least see it through the next checkpoint on my roadmap, and that was the 2006 Olympics. So I ended up qualifying for another Olympic team and competed in Italy. And I was out there the day before my race, and I started to recognize the thoughts that were going through my head. I was looking at my competitors. They looked incredibly strong. Myself, I was feeling kind of tired and heavy in the legs. And I started to hear those little voices go, "Oh man, you've set goals too high. You can't do this. This is too hard." But then I realized a lot of that stuff was out of my control. I couldn't control my competitors. So I decided to take that conversation and shift it a bit and say, you know what? I've worked hard for 4 years to get here. I know I can ski well, and all I have to do is go out there and ski as fast as I can from the start line to the finish line. So I changed the conversation in my head. I focused on what I could do, and I ended up surprising myself. I ended up finishing 9th place on the day, which was the best ever women's result we'd ever had at the Olympics. And I recognized that being able to control that conversation in your head allowed me to do something I didn't even totally believe I could do. So that was my proof that I was on track. So the next year, I got named to the World Cup team. It was so exciting. It was a dream come true to compete on the World Cup for the entire season. The only downside was that I was the only US woman on the team. That meant I couldn't compete in relays. I didn't have teammates to share the experience with. And so I started to realize how important a team was going to be in all this. And this team idea started to take shape at the 2010 Olympics in Vancouver. My individual results were okay, but we started to see that the US could be competitive for medals in the team events. But of course, we were all individuals. We were literally competing against each other in races. So this again was kind of a conscious choice. It was recognizing that instead of being individuals competing against each other, if we can kind of come together and push each other to be better, but to create this culture around us of making good choices, of supporting each other, then we could all push through those challenging times, we could get better, and we might end up having some fun along the way. So we started to build this team. And initially, we came together and it was easy. We'd go out training together and we'd push each other. But the real magic is when we started to become a team off the snow. We recognized that if we could, instead of going to our hotel rooms after a tough day of training, we would go bowling, or we would get together and come up with a dance. And we found that kind of by being a little bit silly, but really coming together as a team and deciding that team goals were as important as our individual goals, we started to ski really fast. So one of the things that we found that helped us coming into some big championships was to actually come together and make a music video. So here's where I'm going to take you to the next slide. We're going to pause for a second. Aubrey is going to put a link in the chat. So go ahead and watch the video. It's only about 40 seconds long, so you can get a little glimpse of our music video, and then come back and join me here in a little bit.
That was a great video. This is Aubrey.
All right, cool. So hopefully you all got a chance to see the video. That came up as a silly idea, but we eventually got the men on the team, we got the staff involved, and we found that coming together and doing that fun video, it helped us kind of manage the nerves and really come into the championships feeling like a team. And what I love about that now is I have this cool little time capsule. I can hear that song and it takes me right back to that moment. So as we start to kind of harness this team energy, that coincides with my progress through my roadmap. And so as we come into the 2013 season, I've now been going at this for about 10 years, and things are really getting fun. I end up winning the overall World Cup sprint title, which is that crystal globe looking thing you see there on the left, proving I'm the fastest sprinter in the world. I'm winning World Cup races over in Europe in front of thousands of fans. And then Jessie Diggins and Jessie Diggins at that point is just a young little sister on the team. We called her the Sparkle Chipmunk. She came in, we teamed up, and we won the gold medal at the World Championships in the team sprint. And so that daunting process over 10 years, all of a sudden came together. And as we came into the 2014 Winter Olympics, I was considered a gold medal favorite in the individual freestyle sprint. This was so exciting because I got to be on a cereal box. I got to showcase what was so cool about my sport and my team. And I came into those Olympics so confident that I could finally win that gold medal I had been dreaming about my entire career. So as we come into the Sochi Olympics, this time when I'm out there the day before the race, I recognize that conversation in my head again. This time I'm in a totally different place because I'm feeling confident and ready. But I decide to make myself a promise. And that is, if I go out there and I ski as hard as I possibly can, I'm not afraid, I take risks, and I leave everything out on the snow, then no matter what the result, I will walk away satisfied. And as I think about this in my mind, I can picture standing on that podium. So the next day, we head out to the race. It's 60 degrees. What? I thought we were at the Winter Olympics. This is crazy because the sun is so hot. It's literally melting the snow under our skis, turning into mashed potatoes. The conditions are getting tough. But I don't panic because I ski on the glaciers in Alaska in the summertime. I am prepared for this. As I get my quarterfinal heat draw, I see that I'm up against two of the other heavy gold medal favorites, and only two of us are going to move on to the next round. But again, I don't panic because I've been racing these women all season and I'm ready. So as the gun goes off, my strategy is to go out hard, get to the front of the field, hammer everybody up the course's main climb, get to the front, and just lead to the finish. So the gun goes off, I head out there, I get to the hill, I put my head down, and I hammer as hard as I possibly can. By the time I get to the top of the climb, the effort is thundering in my ears and I cannot tell what's going on behind me. As we head down into the stadium, the snow gets really soft and I come around this hairpin turn and I start to feel one ski come off the ground. But thanks to all those years of alpine skiing, I get my foot back on the ground and I sail into the stadium in the lead. Now, as I'm getting ready to come off the final turn, I'm thinking to myself, all right, I'm going to kick it into my final gear. But as I come off that last turn onto the finish stretch, I realize I'm kind of already in my final gear. But that's okay. I can see the finish line. I'm sprinting with all I have. As I'm sprinting down the stretch, I start to feel these shadows come up on either side of me. I am digging with everything I possibly can. But as we get towards that finish line, I try to lunge and I see a flash out of the corner of my eye. As I slide to a halt, I look at the scoreboard and I realize I'm not first and I'm not second. So I'm not going to automatically advance to the semifinals. But I'm in a photo finish for third place, what they call the lucky loser. When the result comes out though, I've lost by 0.05 of a second. Instead of advancing to the semifinals and competing for that medal, my day is finished. I am in complete shock. But as I stand there, I remember that promise that I had made myself the day before. And that is, if you go out there and ski as hard as you possibly can, you take risks, you leave it out there, then no matter what, you can walk away satisfied. So I'm not going to lie, I was extremely disappointed, but I was also really proud of my effort. As soon as I got out of the area, I ran over to my team because my young teammate, Sophie Caldwell, competing in her first Olympics, had qualified for the semifinals. So I told her everything I knew about the course. I gave her strategy tips, and I literally poured my energy into her, and it made me feel better. Because even though I didn't get the result I wanted, I could help a teammate succeed. So we had 3 more races at those Olympics. 3 more times, I went out and skied as hard as I could, but 3 more times, I fell short, and we left those Olympics without a medal. Now here's where I had a big decision to make. At this point, I had been to 4 Olympics. I had been professionally ski racing for 14 years. I would not get a chance at my best event in the next Olympics because of the way the techniques flip-flop. But we did have a chance at relay medals. And after putting in 14 years of hard work, I loved what I was doing and I wasn't ready to walk away. My husband and I were excited to start a family. That was also part of the decision. But I couldn't imagine walking away. So my husband and I started to get strategic, and we decided that I could take a season off, have a baby, and then come back. So I took the winter of 2016 away from the World Cup. I kept training. I was really curious to see what my body could do. And it turns out that even though I was doing things a little differently than before, I could actually do a lot. And here's where that positive mindset came in again. It isn't about doing everything that you think you should be doing. It's about focusing on the things that you can do. So with some patience and having a little creativity, in the spring of 2016, I welcomed my son Breck, and I got back to training. Now, as an athlete, I love to sleep. And for those parents out there, you know that when you have a new baby in your life, you don't always exactly get to sleep when you want. So a lot of things were out of my control, but at the same time, I was excited about the possibility. I stayed patient. I worked on gradually building myself back up. And it turned out that babies actually make great weight vests. So I found ways to integrate my son into my training. And my husband and my family and I, we packed up on the road and we headed back to the World Cup. First few months of racing were tough, but I was able to build my way back into form. And about a year after my son was born, I made the podium at the World Championships, and I got to take my son on the podium with me. As you can see here, he's not super impressed, but I hope someday I can share this memory with him that he was part of it. And that result proved to me that I was back and I was ready to go for my final Olympic appearance. So as we headed into the 2018 season, I knew it would be my last Olympics and I knew it would be my last season racing. I wanted to leave it all out there. So remember way back when I was the only woman on the US team and I really wanted teammates, so I started encouraging us all to train together and get better? Well, the one thing I hadn't anticipated was that my teammates would get so fast that I might be out of a job. So we're heading into the 2018 Olympics, and I end up developing a stress fracture in my foot. So 6 weeks out from the games, I'm not supposed to ski, I'm not able to race, I'm aqua jogging in the pool in Switzerland, trying to stay in shape, definitely having all those panicked thoughts in my head, but kind of realizing, all right, you've been through this before, just do what you can every day and we'll come into the games. But because my teammates were racing so fast, I didn't know if I would get a chance to even race. So 36 hours before the team sprint, which was the event we knew we probably had the best medal chance in, I still didn't know if I would race. I'm sitting in the athlete village with my teammate from Alaska, Sadie Bjornson. It's 10 o'clock at night, and the coach walks in. And we can tell from the look on his face, he's ready to tell us who they'd chosen. So we knew Jessie Diggins was going to be on the team because she was skiing fantastic. In fact, she had been mere seconds from a medal just days before. But the second spot, they had decided to give to me. So I'm hearing the most incredible news in my mind, right? If there's an emoticon, I'm probably going, so excited. But my teammate who's sitting next to me has just heard the opposite news, that she won't get to be on the team and that she doesn't get to race for a medal. But in that moment, I got to witness the most incredible show of team spirit I have ever seen. Sadie looked at me and she said, I believe in you as much as I believe in myself. What can I do to help? She could have run away, thrown something at me, but she was committed to the team. So we go out the night of the sprint. We'd been sitting around all day because we didn't race until the evening. Jessie and I realized that the last time she and I had teamed up for a race was in 2013 when we won that gold medal. Happened to be around the time the show Glee was really popular. So to settle our nerves, we actually looked up our favorite Glee clips. And the last song we watched before leaving the room was Don't Stop Believing. We headed out to the race that night with our relay socks on and our USA face paint. Now, even though this was my 5th Olympics, I was really nervous because I was racing against the best skiers that have ever been in the sport, Marit Bjørgen from Norway and Charlotte Kalla from Sweden. On paper, they were better skiers than me. And I knew it was my job to stick with them, keep us in the race so that I could set Jessie up for a good last lap. So I decided I was ready to roll my eyes back in my head if I had to. I was going to keep us in the race. So as we walked out into the stadium that night, the lights were so bright, I had to wear sunglasses. As the camera panned in front of me for my last race, I knew I was ready to go. So the way a team sprint works is each racer has to race 3 laps, but we tag off to our partner in between. So imagine doing an all-out 3-minute sprint, tagging your partner, getting about 3 minutes to rest, then doing it again and again. Pretty much one of the most brutal race formats I've ever done. So the first lap goes out, I tuck myself in a nice position, things go pretty uneventful. I tag off to Jessie, she heads out for her first lap. In between, I go into this pit zone and the technicians actually take my skis off so they can reapply a new layer of wax. So I look up and Jessie is coming down the hill into the stadium and my skis are still on the table. And I'm going, guys, she's coming, I need my skis. And they got those skis off the table onto my feet seconds before Jessie came to the tag zone. So I go out for my second lap. And this is when I know things are going to get tough because I knew that Marit and Charlotte would be upping the pace, and they did. But as we went around the course, I was matching them stride for stride. On Jessie's second lap, she decides things are getting a little bit crowded. She puts in a couple bursts of speed, and as she tags me for my final lap, we are in the lead of the race. Heading out of the stadium, I'm leading, but Norway and Sweden seem to want to come around me. So I think, great strategy, they can block the wind. As they get in front of me, however, I start to feel a little bit of snow open up between us. And I know I cannot let that happen. So I dig in and I accelerate and I get myself right back on their tails. As we climb up the course's main climb, I'm skiing as hard as I possibly can, but I'm right there. The rest of my leg is a blur, but I come into the exchange zone, I tag Jessie, and I get to fall in the snow with the best feeling ever. I just kept us in the race. I did my job. As I get up, I see the leaders coming into the stadium. There's down to 3 teams. As I watch them come down the last downhill, I see Jessie go wide, so wide that she actually goes off the course, and now I'm not sure I want to watch, but she comes back in at just the right time and sneaks in between Norway and Sweden. So now I'm running over to the finish so I can see the final stretch, and I'm peering around the photographers, and I see USA and Sweden down the final stretch. So I start yelling, and then I realize the Swedish teammate is standing right next to me. So as she yells louder, I yell louder, and we have our own screaming competition to see whoever can will their teammate to the finish line faster. So we're screaming and they're sprinting, and it is neck and neck, too close to call. I see this lunge at the line, and I look up at the scoreboard, and this time I see number 1, United States, 0.19. We didn't just get a medal, we won the gold medal. And I let out the most ugly, awkward, primal scream because I just couldn't even believe it. So I ran over and I tackled Jessie, and she still had enough breath to say, "Did we just win the Olympics?" And we had this moment, but the best part was we got up off the snow and our entire team was right there. This team that had been on this journey with us, that had pushed us, you know, we had all made each other better. We had carried each other through tough times. We had celebrated silliness. Together, we had worked on this, and we all got to experience this ultimate accomplishment. So this story almost feels too good to be true. So we're going to transition here to the second video to make sure that that actually happened. So go ahead and check out the link in the chat for this second video. I'll watch it too, just in case.
So this is Aubrey, and watching that, I was so nervous, even though you just told us what happened. I'm sure other people probably felt the same way. That was incredible.
Yeah, so I mean, I watch it and I just kind of, yeah, I feel the emotion. It's just so incredible, and the part I realize is just this journey that I was on. You know, it had its ups and downs, but we kept kind of thinking about the future we wanted, thinking about how cool it would be to win that medal someday, and ultimately got to experience. And so the funny thing about winning an Olympic medal is that you spend so much time working on getting to the race that you don't actually prepare for what to do if you win. So the next night we're at the medal ceremony and we're backstage, and Jesse elbows me and goes, "Kikkan, let's do the team dance on the podium." And I'm like, okay, so that's like this, and then that's like the floss, and then, okay, so I'm like totally not paying attention to the instructions. So we get out there and I try to go up on the podium too early, and Jesse has to pull my coat. We do the team dance, and thankfully I don't mess it up too bad. And then we step up on the podium and they present us with the medals. And I had this little superstition that I didn't want to touch an Olympic medal until I exhausted all my chances to win one. I'd actually been at a party once and a bronze medal came by and I had to pull kind of a matrix move out of the way. So I lean over for them to present the medal around my neck. And I totally did not expect it to be as heavy as this thing is. And I almost fell off the podium. But as I did feel the weight of this medal around my neck, standing next to my teammate, looking out into the crowd, all my teammates there, my family, it really is appropriate that these things are so heavy because of all that it took to get there. And in that moment, I thought back over the journey and I realized that this roadmap that had started with this flicker of an idea at 19 years old, that was going to be this 10-year process, it ultimately took 16 years. And it wasn't this perfect stair step, okay, everything goes perfectly. It actually looked a little bit more like this. It was up sometimes and down other times, but being inspired by that dream, staying committed, working on those steps one at a time, building a team that I would ultimately say was the best part of this whole process. I mean, shiny medals are nice, but the experiences I had with the people that I did this with are my greatest treasures from my athletic career. And because all that came together and we worked through those tough times, had some patience, we got to say we were the best in the world on that day. So that's pretty much the most amazing finish to a career anyone could ask for. I was absolutely on cloud nine, so excited to close that chapter of my life and look ahead to the next, where I could focus on my family and I could focus on getting out and telling these stories. And so my family and I, we moved from Alaska to British Columbia to follow my husband's job. My son had just turned 2 years old, and it was Mother's Day. And we decided to go out for this family hike. It was a beautiful day, the flowers were out, and I just remember feeling so content, like life is so good, I'm so excited. And then that night, I happened to notice a spot in my chest that just didn't feel right. And it would have been really easy to be like, it's probably nothing, like I'm in amazing shape, I'm superhuman. But I kind of knew that it didn't seem right and I should probably get it checked. So I went to the doctors and they did some tests, and it turns out that that lump was actually cancer, breast cancer. So in an instant, I went from being this invincible athlete to all of a sudden facing cancer and fearing for my life, wondering about all of these scary things. You know, my 2-year-old son is right there. But as those feelings started to sink in, I realized that this was just like being before a race, being nervous, having that conversation in my mind. And I needed to use the power of that conversation to set myself on the new goal. And that was doing whatever I needed to do, going through treatment to try and get better so I could be there for my family and I could still go after all those things I wanted to do in my life. So I went back to my athlete handbook and I said, okay, this is a big challenge. I got to make a plan. So this time I sat down with my doctors and we made a plan. I figured out all the steps I was going to need to complete to get to that future that I wanted. This also gave me something to literally mark off each day. Each day was tough, but I could see the progress. I could see what I was working towards. The other thing I knew was going to be really important in this was having a team. Except this time, I wasn't going to be the strong leader out front. This is where I was going to need people around me that would also adhere to that positive attitude. They would help lift me up through the tough days. And I was really fortunate to have an incredible team. My friends went wig shopping with me when I lost my hair. My family wore these t-shirts, and I never spent a moment alone sitting in that chemotherapy chair. And I'm a pretty optimistic, positive person, but I had my days where I struggled, and that's where this team helped lift me up, helped keep me headed on the right direction. In July, just a few months after winning that gold medal, I started my chemotherapy. Within a couple of weeks, my hair had fallen out. I made the commitment that I was going to stay active during my treatment. I wanted to give myself some little goal to do every single day. And that was, I was going to try to go out and do something for 10 minutes. 10 minutes, it's not that much. And I figured if I could get out for 10 minutes, if I still felt tired and crummy, well, I could always turn around, but then I would at least meet my goal. And it turned out that setting that goal of 10 minutes helped me get out the door. And once I got out the door, I stopped thinking about how miserable I felt or all the what ifs or the scary statistics. And I started thinking about being in the moment and being happy that I could still move and that I could still be with all my friends. And the physical activity, I really think, helped me stay positive in my mind. But of course, even with all these things, there were some of the toughest moments I've ever faced in my life, because there were a lot of things that I couldn't control, and there were a lot of scary things, and that was okay. So in those moments when I struggled to find the positive, when I struggled to feel okay, I employed some different tactics, and that was happy colors. I had been tricked by Instagram into buying these rainbow colored shoes a couple of months before my diagnosis. So when I started going to those doctor's appointments, I thought, you know what? I'm going to wear my rainbow colored shoes so that no matter how tough and intense this gets, I can look at my feet and I can remind myself to stay positive and to stay hopeful. As I was going through treatment, I found these rainbow colored shoes very helpful. So then my husband came up with the idea, maybe we could come out with something else colorful that could help people going through other challenging situations. And in doing so, we could raise a little money for Active Against Cancer, which is a nonprofit that I had been working with, promoting physical activity. And by coming up with these socks and putting them out there, it was so cool to see the community and the connection and to realize I wasn't alone and there were so many people going through this, but that by sharing those positive experiences, we could all give each other a little encouragement to get through those things. So in this moment, I noticed that when we go through challenging things, our human nature is to kind of close in, to say, oh, this is tough, but don't close in, be open, find other people, because that shared experience also lifts you up in those challenging times. So because I had a plan, an amazing team, and my colorful socks, I was able to get through my challenging treatment, and as far as we know at this point, I'm cancer-free. Now, unfortunately, cancer isn't something that you can just check off the list or kick to the rearview mirror. It's something that will always be a threat for me. But instead of choosing to spend my days focused on that possibility, I have decided I'm going to look forward. I'm going to think about the future that I want. I'm going to believe that's possible. And I'm not going to waste a single day going out and doing all the things I love to do, regardless of whether it's raining or maybe things didn't go exactly the way I want. Because after you've been through an experience like cancer, you realize that no matter where we are, every day is a gift and we could take advantage. And if we do those little things every day, that sets us up for when things do return to normal and you can get back after all those things you love to do. And I see so many similarities in what we're all going through right now. This has been a challenging situation. It's been incredibly scary. It's been tough to see the mounting cases and the effect it's having all over the world. But there are little things that we can do every day to find joy, to make progress, to relate to each other, even if it's over webcams like this. And you'd be surprised at how all those little things we do every day are ultimately going to keep you moving forward. And we will get back to better days. We will get back to that great future we all want. But let's not stop and sit around. Let's keep moving and let's believe in the possibility. Because our next start line awaits. And if we can think about those goals that really get us excited, we make a plan of how we're going to get there. We create a team, we bond together, we don't close in, we reach out, we support others. And invariably, we will face challenge. But find your happy socks. Find that little thing that can remind you to keep taking one step at a time, to find the good, to stay positive. Because I know if we can do all of these things, there are a lot more gold medals in all of our futures. And it's also important to remind ourselves every day that it's going to be okay. That's been my mantra through so many things. When I had the stress fracture, when I was going through cancer, even now when so much is uncertain, it's going to be okay. We're going to do this. So that's my story. There's a few different storylines in there. I hope that you can see yourself in some of those stories. You never know what's ahead, but know that you have the strength inside of you. Keep those things in mind as you keep plugging forward. So, okay, we've reached the point at the end of my story, and now is the fun part where we open it up for some questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we'll get to the Q&A part.
Okay, all right. So we want to encourage people to post questions in the chat box if they have any. So we'll give folks a little bit of time to do that. And while people are thinking, I want to say thank you so much, Keegan. That was amazing. And oops, my cat is trying to knock our computer off. That's not good. And I love what you said at the end about finding joy, making progress, relate to each other, keep moving forward. I think that's so relevant right now. And so I'm wondering even about the spirit of team and connection, and maybe if you could talk a little bit more about how you think that could apply right now for folks, you know, and what that could mean for people.
Yeah, well, it starts probably right in your home. You're with your team at home probably more than you ever have been for a while. And of course, you know, when we're all together, there's stressful situations. You know, things can get uncomfortable. You can disagree. You can get kind of sick of each other. And I'll admit that when I was living on the road with my teammates for 5 months of the year, kind of living like gypsies, you know, traveling around, being far away from home, we got on each other's nerves too. But we would talk about it. That was kind of a tenet of our team, to say, you know what, look, we do respect each other, we support each other, we recognize it's going to be challenging. So if something is bothering you, talk about it. And if you can't talk about it directly, then maybe you find some activity that you can go do with the person you're getting a little bit. And sometimes those kind of just something simple, some good activity, it changes the mood, and you kind of remember that, oh yeah, we like the same things. You know, this other thing that I thought was a big issue, I can recognize. So I think kind of recognizing that in yourself, that there will be problems, but there are effective ways of dealing with it. Finding those fun opportunities to get a little bit silly. I feel like that has diffused some pressure from time to time. And then beyond your family unit and your team, you know, now is a time where we can't go out and high five and, you know, hug all our friends and have parties, but we can reach out. I have gotten in touch with all of my teammates who were all spread out across the country. And we've been talking about, you know, hey, how are you feeling? What are you going through? What are you listening to right now? You know, it's just a great time to really connect with people in however you can. And so make that as a goal for yourself, to reach out to people and to share experiences. And another thing along the same line that has really worked for me is I seek out people who I like the way they think, I like the way they act, and I love to read about their stories. And I love to see what they've been through. So that now is also a great time to be out kind of looking at, you know, stories, role models, and recognizing that whether you know it or not, you are a role model as well. And right now, everyone's kind of looking to each other, like, what do we do? And if you can kind of be that one who says, you know what, like, we're going to figure this out, we're going to do this together. I'm going to do those little things I can every day. You know, I'm going to try to take good care of myself. I'm going to realize when the stress is building up, and I'm going to manage that. You get to be a leader and a role model for those around you. And I found sometimes that when things were really stressful, kind of realizing that I get to have an impact on others, or I can even help others, it helps take the pressure off of what's not going well for me. And it's like a nice distraction in a way. And it only has upsides, because you help someone else get better. It helps distract you, and ultimately that person may end up coming back and, you know, helping you through a hard time. So you know, I think just kind of being aware of opportunity and trying different things, and again, just kind of recognizing, you know, it's going to be okay. These challenging situations, you know, are going to come up, but you're going to work through it.
Great. All right, we got some questions in the chat box. So here's one. Aubrey says the sprint race you talked about towards the beginning of your presentation, fastest woman in the world. What was the distance and how fast did you go?
Yeah, so I think she's mentioning the picture of me speed skiing down the mountain. And I alpine raced while I was in middle school, and I was the only girl on the team with a bunch of boys. And so we entered this speed skiing competition. But because we were under 15, they wouldn't let us start all the way at the top. And I remember being so mad, like, just because I'm a girl and just because I'm a kid, you know, like, I want to start at the top. But anyways, started at the lower start line, still felt incredibly fast. I went 74 miles an hour, and because I was the best, you know, well, I'm one of the only women in the race, I got to say I was the Alaska State speed skiing champion. It's possibly a record that still stands today. So, you know, it was just cool. Like, you know, it was a new experience. You know, it was a little bit intimidating, but I jumped in, and the exhilaration of going fast was super cool. And I really credit experiences like that for ultimately helping me be a better cross-country skier, knowing how to take lines, you know, feeling comfortable going fast, which I think has only enhanced my ability as an athlete. So.
Awesome. We have a question from Mark, who says, thanks very much for sharing tonight. Fantastic stuff. Any advice to help power through workouts or training when things get tough from a mental and physical aspect?
Yes, and it doesn't matter how good you are, how long you've been doing it, you're always going to encounter tough situations. And so this is again where the power of the mind really comes into play. And there's two tactics that really have worked well for me. One is to give myself small things to focus on. You know, if I'm racing a 10-kilometer race, 10 kilometers, you know, that's a long ways. That's 6 miles. That's up and over hills. That's you know, almost 30 minutes of work. So instead of thinking it as, oh my gosh, I have to hurt for 30 minutes, I would think of it as, okay, I'm going to ski this kilometer, or even I'm going to ski to that tree, or I'm going to get to the top of that hill. And then once I'd get to that point, it was like, okay, I just have to get to the next one. And so I think when you're facing like a tough workout, like, you know, you want to get out the door for an hour run, and 5 minutes in, you're like, I don't think I can run an hour today. Well, think of it as 5 minutes at a time. And it's amazing as how you progress through those little milestones. It's almost like your body and your mind respond. It's like, well, I did that, so I can do that again. And then you've done that, and now you can do that again. And so that's a good tactic. The other part is committing to being your own best cheerleader. To recognize that we all have those two voices in our minds, and one wants to get negative. It wants to remind you how tired you are. It reminds you of what else you'd rather be doing. It tells you you're not good enough. But then you also have the voice that says, no, I can do this. I'm good. I've worked at this. Just because I'm out here is making me better. And so just recognize that conversation in your head and choose to be the cheerleader. You know, it can be tough sometimes, but just, you know, start small and build up, and you know, building yourself up makes you go forward. If you let that other voice win, it's just going to pull you back, and you want to go forward.
I think that's good advice too for what we're going through right now too. It's like just sort of taking it in chunks. Like I'm going to get through today, and then tomorrow I'm going to get through today again until, you know, until we're hopefully at the end. So great. If folks have other questions, we are still happy to take those. So get them into that chat box. I have another question for you, Kikkan, while we're waiting. So you were kind of like a pioneer in your sport, and you know, you sort of decided, I'm going to go after this and do it. What advice do you have for other young people who have these great, big, audacious goals to, you know, to be whatever it is that they want to be?
Well, the first thing is, if there's something that keeps coming back to your mind, like, you know, we all see shiny things, you know, the whole squirrel thing, you know, we'll think of something like, oh, it'd be really cool to go to space, and then it'd be really cool to do this. But if there's something that kind of like keeps coming back into your mind, and for me, that was the Olympics. It was like the Olympics. And then funny enough, when I tried cross-country skiing at 6 years old, I didn't love it. It was hard, and you know, my coaches kind of had to like trick me into like, if I skied up the hill, then I could go down and go up jumps. But somehow like the Olympics and cross-country skiing kept coming back into my mind. So it was something that I just was like, that would be so cool to win a medal someday. And then it was about, okay, if this is something that's really sticking with me, it gets me excited. Now, how do I get there? And that's where that roadmap was super important. And it was crazy to be 19 years old and sit down and create a plan that was going to take 10 years when no American woman had ever been like top 15 on the World Cup. And here I was plotting out these steps of how I was going to go top 15, top 10, top 5, podium. But all of a sudden I could see that I didn't have to go from 44th place to first overnight. I didn't have to do this huge chasm of things. I just had to go get a little bit better this year, then a little bit better next year, and just kind of believe that those steps would kind of build up. And having those little steps and being able to check off those goals, it built my confidence. And like I said, it didn't always go perfectly. I would go up and then I'd go backwards for a bit. But I had that roadmap to kind of constantly kind of guide me. And I had that dream kind of inspire me along the way. And it ultimately came down to, why not? You know, put it out there, try. It could happen. And I think that's so important with our dreams is, you know, we can talk ourselves out of anything. You know, there's a lot of things that, you know, have never been done before, but the things that have been done had to be done when they had never been done before. So think about it as, why not? Why not me? Why not? Why can't I do this? And then create that roadmap and go. And I'll tell you, like, if I had stopped my career after the 2014 Olympics, when I was this big gold medal favorite and I didn't get the medal, I still wouldn't have traded that experience for the world, because all the things I learned, all the things I got to do along the way, I got to be a cross-country skier. So I'm fit, I'm healthy, I have these amazing friends all over the world. I think anything you pursue, you will gain so much along the way that it's always worth it. So don't be afraid of that vision of the future that you want and going after it.
Great. All right, we got a couple more in here. So let's do a fun one. What do you like to listen to when you work out? Do you have a favorite song? And do you like Marvel movies?
Well, my mom teases me that I've always seen myself as superhuman. So you can say, I guess I do relate to superheroes. And for a while, I was sponsored by the Subway restaurants in Alaska. And they actually made me into a cartoon superhero that was going around the city saving people from eating greasy hamburgers and having healthy sandwiches instead. So yeah, so I got the superhero thing. But what I love to listen to is high energy music. I guess you could say it's probably mostly pop, but there's some country in there too. And I love songs that I can pull out like a phrase or a chorus that I turn into motivation. So, you know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger is something that I would run through my head when I was doing those tough uphill intervals. And actually one of my favorite songs is Battlefield by Jordan Sparks. And it kind of became my my song when I had a stress fracture in my foot. This was before the Olympic one in 2018. And while my teammates were all out training and skiing, I was limited to training half of the normal amount. I could only run in the pool. I could do stuff with my upper body, but I couldn't use my feet. And so I had to kind of stay focused on those like little things I could do. And so as I worked my way through that, Battlefield was like that song where it's like, okay, I've been through the battlefield, man. I've been putting in my time, doing this hard training that's not been very, very fun, but I've done it. I've put in the work, and now I'm ready to go back out there on the ski trails and fight. And so that was just, I always found songs that just kind of gave me that that confident, strong feeling that I could get through anything. And I think particularly in times when I was facing adversity, those songs became so powerful.
Great. So that's actually related to another question, which was advice about how to stay motivated during a setback. So you were just talking about the stress fracture, for example. So any additional advice other than some of the things you actually just said?
Yeah. I think it's again really important to recognize that there are things that you can control and things you can't. And when you're at the beginning of an adverse situation, all you can think about is all the things you can't do. But thinking about those things doesn't get you anywhere. So what I would do is I go, okay, I can't go ski, but I can jog in the pool, or I can be on a stationary bike. And they weren't the funnest things in the world, so maybe I'd listen to a podcast, or I'd put on the good music, or I'd invite a friend to meet me at the athletic club and do it with me. So focusing on those things that I could so that I could feel like a little accomplishment every day. I think that's really powerful when we're not able to do the things we think we should be doing, but doing something is important. And what I found in those situations where I had to be creative and I had to do different things, that actually helped me focus on weaknesses or unlock a strength that I didn't know I had. And I think ultimately made me better than if I had never faced the injury or the adversity in the first place. And there were certainly all the physical benefits, but I also noticed like the mental benefit, like almost like when you have something taken away, when you get it back, you are just like so excited and appreciative of it. And so I think, you know, it's like right now we can't go out and do all the things we're used to doing, and it's a bummer, right? But you're finding new things to do. And then when we do get a chance to get back to doing all those things, we're going to appreciate it and be able to celebrate that so much. So I think ultimately it just comes down to, you know, okay, I can't control that. I can control this. I'm going to do it. And then by doing that, I get to feel accomplishment and I get to kind of move forward. And one step turns into 2 steps, turns into 10 steps. Weeks go by, and all of a sudden we're back to where we want to be.
Great. So I got one more here. So last chance, everybody, when we ask this question, if you have anything else burning, put it in the chat box. You mentioned during the presentation your team did a lot of fun things together. What brought you all together?
Well, we had to force ourselves a little bit at first, because like I said, we were willing to cooperate in training, but then everybody kind of wanted to go off and be themselves. So the first goal was Team Tuesday. So we just made a commitment that on Tuesdays we were going to do something fun, and it could be like a walk at night together or bowling. But then as we started doing these Tuesdays, it was like we got out and we got silly and we had fun, and then people started coming up with more ideas, and that's how the music video came. And the one you saw was the I Knew You Were Trouble, Taylor Swift. That was in 2013. We came out with another one that was a much bigger production to the Bruno Mars song Uptown Funk in 2015. So I think you start small, you start doing some of those things, and then you just recognize that it's fun and it enhances your experience, and that kind of just starts to foster it from there. But you also have to kind of be committed to it. You have to talk about it, and you say, like, you know, what do we want? Like, do we want to see this go forward? Do we have common goals that we're all working on together? And then if we're going to do that, you know, then we work together. And I think we kind of chose to embrace that. And what was cool was we started doing it, and then we were just open about it. And it was like, the more we talked about it, the more we became it. And then because we talked about it, then people started looking to us and going, wow, those girls really have team spirit. And then they started to emulate us. And we ended up having this ripple effect across the World Cup. At the 2014 Olympics, we thought we had a chance to win a medal in the 4-person relay. And we just none of us had a good day. We ended up finishing 9th. So that night we're all in the Olympic Village. It's kind of a stormy night. We're all running, kind of like bummed, looking at our feet. And our Finnish friend comes running over. And the Finns had an amazing day. They'd finished in a second. They got the silver medal. And our friend bursts into tears. And we're kind of like what's going on? You should be happy. She goes on to tell us that the previous summer she had joined us for a training camp in Alaska on the glacier. And we had trained really hard, but we had also made her do a lip sync contest. And Finns are, you know, not known for being like super outgoing. So by like helping her be kind of silly, she then talked her Finnish teammates into doing karaoke the night before the relay. And she felt that is what helped them win the silver medal. So kind of backfired in that we kind of helped our competition beat us, but so cool to see that by having her come to our training camp, I mean, we certainly learned from her and created a friendship, but we were able to have that ripple effect beyond ourselves too. And I think that just kept snowballing and kept contributing to it. And it's like, it just kind of built from there.
Awesome. Awesome. So I know we aren't all going to be lucky enough to be Olympic gold medalists, but I love your story. And I think there's so many, I think you did a really great job really pulling out some of those pieces and things that we can really be thinking about now to get through our own challenging time and come out ahead. I guess, Aubrey, I don't know if you want to turn your camera back on here as we get ready to say goodbye. Give her a second to do that. I think she can do that while I'm
here.
There you are.
Yep.
But I want to say thank you. I'll give Aubrey a chance too, but I really appreciate, Kikkan, your willingness to do this with us. I think this is actually one of the times where, you know, things being what they are, maybe worked in our favor to be able to put this together. You know, because under normal circumstances, I don't know if we could have done this, but I think this is great. So to be able to bring you here from a, you know, a different time zone, many hours away, is very exciting. And I'll shut my camera off so we can see both of you guys. And
Yeah, I echo everything Stephanie said. I don't have anything additional to add. Just thank you all so much for taking time out of your night to join us. And I hope that you got as much out of it as I did. It's certainly inspirational, and can't thank you enough, Kikkan, for sharing your story and for giving us all some motivation and hope during this really difficult time. So thank you.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And remember, like, it can be as simple as 10 minutes a day, and it could be as simple as choosing to say, things are going to be okay. So, you know, it's Thursday. We got one more day left in the week. We've got so much to look forward to. So have a great night, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. And we'll all get through this.
Thank you. Have a great night, everybody. Bye. All right. I always feel so weird now. Oh. All right. Well, Kikkan, thank you again so much. There we go.
Yeah, my pleasure.